I mean, I think sports are one of the most powerful things in the world. You can build confidence, you can make friends. I just worked at a camp out in Oregon called Camp Spark. It's Northwestern Association of Blind Athletes, and they just run camps year round. To be in a building where everyone is trying to get better, like you don't find many environments like that.
Welcome to Blind Abilities. I'm Jeff Thompson. Today I'm excited to have in the studio Ricky Tees. Ricky Tees is a member of the United States National Visually Impaired Judo Team, member of the Hall of Fame in Minnesota for his contributions to wrestling, whether it be as a wrestler or a coach, and also holds a degree in sports psychology. Ricky Tees, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Jeff.
Well, Ricky, thank you so much for coming on to Blind Abilities, taking the time out of your day to share a little bit about your journey to all our listeners.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Good to be able to talk.
Glad you could be here, Ricky. Now, that's quite a feat to be on the U.S. National Visually Impaired Judo Team, but there was a time where you thought you were done with that in the competitive arena until you heard about the U.S. National Team looking for former wrestlers who may want to participate in judo.
Yeah, it's a crazy story. I had wrestled through high school and college and had a pretty decent career, and then was in the coaching realm for, close to 10 years. And a friend of mine that was helping me do some coaching sent me an article. He said, USA Judo put an article in USA Wrestling magazine looking for ex-visually impaired wrestlers to try out for the Team USA Judo Team. I was a little skeptical. I was 32 at the time and didn't think I was probably exactly what they're looking for. But people kept checking in and asking if I looked into it. And eventually I started making some phone calls, and wasn't long after I found myself trying judo for the first time out in Colorado, and wasn't long after that I was having enough success that I was traveling over in Europe, over in Hungary, and competing with the team.
That's awesome. Now, when you say ex-wrestler, I mean, you have a history of wrestling, and you're a member of the Minnesota Hall of Fame for your contributions to wrestling.
Yeah, it was a great honor. Last year, the National Wrestling Hall of Fame has a chapter in each state, and last year I was inducted in with the Medal of Courage, and definitely for visually impaired, I had a lot of success as a wrestler comparatively. But, I wrestled in high school and college. I've coached at the college level and high school level. I've ran my own program. I've been involved in some tournaments. And then also I've done this judo thing, which has brought some more attention back to wrestlers in the area. And after years of that, they thought that my career was pretty inspirational, which makes me feel good. It's humbling, but it is nice to know that you are affecting people and people are noticing when you're accomplishing things. So yeah, last year I got inducted in, and it was pretty awesome.
And during all this time, you graduated with a bachelor's in psychology, and you finished your master's in sports psychology as well.
Yep, I studied 2 years of junior college out of high school. Didn't know exactly what I was going to do, so I went to the community college here in Rochester, and then I switched over and went to UW La Crosse and got my bachelor's in psychology. And then probably close to 10 years later, realized that I was doing a lot of coaching. I wanted to be a better coach. I wanted to understand people a little better. So I went back and got my master's in sports psychology, just to help people not only physically learn how to train them, but help them be able to control their energy and excel in all ways.
And you did all this, and you have retinitis pigmentosis.
That's right.
RP, as they call it.
Yep.
How did that impact your education? I know in wrestling, it seems like it's easy to grapple with someone in a sense, but how did the educational component come in with RP?
Oh, man, the toughest stuff from a young age was you read a little slower because you're reading with a magnifying glass, can't see the board. So sometimes you need help from the teacher to keep up on notes, which, some classes that's not a big deal. But as you get older and get into maths and sciences, you miss one step and you could be struggling for a whole semester. Those were the biggest things for me, as I was kind of a slow reader. So like taking tests, sometimes you felt a little crammed for time. And, doing assignments sometimes took more time. You didn't have some of the resources you do now with being able to get your phone to read for you, or the audio is not as clear. So those are the main things for me. Yeah, stuff took more time, and then there was a couple things you just couldn't see, and you needed to ask for extra help.
Were your friends, well, I suppose friends wouldn't bother you, but were you hassled a little bit with your eyesight, or were you able to just go about and not too many people noticed?
I think if anyone gave me a hard time, most would be my friends, you know?
Mm-hmm.
For me, especially at a younger age, it wasn't really obvious. Because unless you're in class with me and you saw me reading with a magnifying glass, I'm sure there's a lot of people at my high school that never even knew. But
Mm-hmm.
I think this is kind of one of the things that's been important to me. I think me being involved in athletics and having so many teammates and having some success in sports, whether it was football or wrestling, it gave them another chance to get to know me, not just as someone who maybe needs a little extra help in class or bumps into stuff every once in a while or reads with a magnifying glass. I
Mm-hmm.
think I was able to build up some relationships there where people, you kind of forget about stuff like that once you get to know people. It doesn't seem to be as big of an issue, or you don't even notice it. And then you get to know some people, you build some confidence because you have some success, you carry yourself different, you build social skills. And that's one of the biggest things I got out of sports, and why I think it's important for everyone to do sports, but especially people with vision disorders or disabilities.
As you progressed, I'm sure RP progressed too. When did you start accepting using the cane? That's usually a huge moment.
Yeah, it wasn't too long ago. So I started traveling in maybe my first trip overseas was 2015. Going into airports, sometimes having to travel by yourself and meet people in other states or even other countries sometimes. It was very important that I started carrying the cane. And at first it was just if I was alone, I'd pull it out and then you'd get assistance. Later on, as my vision got worse, I just really started to need it. And at this time, I was not living in Rochester, Minnesota. I was living out in Colorado. So as I slowly needed it, use it, I transitioned into using the cane more. And it was a little bit easier to transition into the cane while in Colorado because I didn't know everyone in town, and not everyone knew me as someone that never used a cane and used to have better vision. So I didn't quite feel as insecure out there. And by the time I came back to Minnesota, I was used to it, and I realized how much it did help me both in getting around in places where I was not comfortable with and in letting people know that I do have a vision disorder, and I'm not acting or staring or walking slow for any other reason. They can kind of recognize that, and it makes social situations less awkward.
How about your technology? Are you a PC or a Mac user?
I mainly use phone and iPad, but I'm all Apple, 100%. Everything. If I can find something by Apple and I can afford it, I want it.
There you go. You got the whole orchard.
Yes, well played.
I think going through school today, people would benefit from a PC because most companies, if you don't know what your career is going to be. But I think as people are older and the onset of blindness comes on, I think Apple fits in really well because that's in your hand. You're traveling with it. You're everywhere with it. And what they've done with the Apple iPhone itself, I mean, that boom, there you go. Get a keyboard on it and you almost have a computer.
Yeah, it connects to other stuff. It just feels so clean to me. I never have problems learning how to do new things on it. I mean, it takes a little bit, but everything is just, it's all got the same rhythm. You never get caught up like, this doesn't make sense. It usually just makes sense to me.
As a coach, having that under your belt, and as a athlete and your degree, the sports psychology, you should have no problems competing because you could coach yourself, you could understand yourself and everything like that. But you must have teammates that you see come along and, you being, I don't want to say old, but it's different. There's so many young people around. Are you still having coaching tendencies when you have teammates?
Yeah, you do. Yeah, you definitely pick stuff apart when you're out with someone and something feels off, correct their technique, or this doesn't feel quite right, or you see them compete and you see something happen. You definitely feel like more of a coach athlete. And if you have a good relationship with people, that works well. If they don't like it, you can figure out pretty quick that they're not interested in your opinion, and you learn from that. But especially when you get to a little bit higher level and you're traveling with people and staying in hotels and you're gone for, a week, 10 days at a time, and you're training together, you build a rapport. And there's definitely a lot of people that you go and look to and ask about coaching advice. I mean, I'm talking about other athletes, not just coaches. Other athletes, you ask for advice, and then some that will come to you and you do figure it out. Yeah, I do definitely think of a lot of stuff more as a coach, especially like training cycles. And it's really weird, like being in charge of the room for so many years and having to go into a room and be the athlete. You don't really have a lot to say. So it's an interesting experience.
What's it like to be a champion in your area, your region, and stuff like that? And then all of a sudden, when you go out to Colorado, you're amongst a lot of champions.
It's fantastic. If you want to be better, it's really the only way to do it. I talked to a lot of people about my experience living out at the training center in Colorado. And even though you're doing something cool and you're in a small percentage of people that get to do sport like this, you're walking around with wrestling world champions and swimming world champions coming through. The whole USA gymnastics team's there. A certain amount of people live there, but there's always people coming through, ex-Olympic gold medalists. And you make relationships with so many people that have accomplished so much that, like I said, even though you know what you're doing is important, you feel very humbled. And it kind of normalizes it to a place where it is kind of easier to train because you don't really ever get complacent because there's so many people that have achieved more around you, training right next to you, you know? Mm-hmm. To be in a building where everyone is trying to get better, like you don't find many environments like that.
What advice would you give to someone who is aspiring athlete that is interested in going further in adaptive sports? A lot of cities I see are growing more and more from beep baseball, blind hockey, judo. What words of advice would you give to someone who is considering such a adventure?
I mean, I think sports are one of the most powerful things in the world. So I'd get out there and try it. Or if I was a parent with a visually impaired blind kid, I would get him out there on that team for a lot of the reasons I talked about earlier. It's just you can build confidence, you can make friends, you can feel a little more normal. I think adaptive sports I'm getting to know more about them. They're great. Things like beep baseball, goalball, blind soccer and stuff now. It all seems really cool. I think if you do have usable vision, I'd recommend that you challenge yourself as long as you can in sports like wrestling, judo, swimming. There's plenty of people that are legally blind that can play football or something. If it ever becomes an injury risk, then you can move on. But to the adaptive sports at the same time, you could mix and match them both. The reason I say that is just if you say you join the wrestling team or you join the swim team, now you're around your peers and you're building relationships with people that you're going to school with. And I think that there's just some value to that. Mm-hmm. And as you grow older, you can always switch into other sports as needed. It's really great to know that they're there and that they are getting bigger. And there's World Series of beat ball and that there's all these high level blind sports that are being created now.
When you're at a camp like that and you have so many youth around you, do you see yourself as a role model?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely see myself as a role model because I've seen where I've been in the position where a lot of these kids have been. And I know that you can go a lot of different directions. So I'm hoping to show them that through sport and through going to college and putting yourself out there and doing some things in life that are a little bit uncomfortable, that you can go a positive direction. If you're blind or visually impaired, you're never going to live a normal life, but you can live a pretty normal life. Not normal in a boring way, but normal in you're working, you have a group of friends, you have a social life, you go on vacations, travel a little bit, own a house. What a lot of people are doing, they're just on their computer or they're working at a center, and that's not normal in a different way where you don't ever experience growth and a level of part of society, and you can go all different directions.
Yeah, you don't have to be pigeonholed into what other people think. You can challenge yourself and prove other people that, hey, they weren't educated. they weren't correct, that you can do something.
Yeah.
With the educational systems that are around the country, Phi-Ed, gym class, it seems like the teachers today are starting to become aware of being inclusive, but it doesn't seem like there's too many opportunities other than going to camp abilities where they do encourage athletes or people to test out sports and see what they can do, see what they're capable of, at least have the opportunity to give it a try. And it seems like some school districts don't have that opportunity as they probably take on some other activity during that time where other students, their peers are doing other things. They're excluded a little bit. So I'm glad to see adaptive sports have grown over the last few years so dramatically.
Yeah, it is nice that people that need it is there. I just worked at a camp out in Oregon called Camp Spark. It's Northwestern Association of Blind Athletes, and they just run camps year-round doing adaptive sports with visually impaired athletes. They go to the point where if you need adaptive equipment at home, they'll send it to you. If you need adaptive equipment into your school, they'll mail that to you. You can borrow it as long as you want.
Oh, wow.
And I mean, I know even some of their students have petitioned to get a week of goalball in their gym class so everyone could try it out. And that happened. I heard that story when I was there a couple weeks ago. So I don't know if other places are doing that besides the Northwest there, but it seems like a really cool way to make sure athletes in school are at least getting a chance to try some sporting events.
It seems like your future has some coaching and some athletics coming up. As you look forward, through your lens, where do you see yourself in 5-10 years?
I definitely see myself working in athletics. I see myself trying to evolve and help the blind community. And I see myself hopefully physically training for something, on some kind of competition, because I live my best life when I'm training for something and have that chance of messing up in public to drive me to be in a little better shape and a little more mentally sharp. So those are 3 things that I hope I'm doing for the long term. And, so I can be helping fix a problem, but also be an example and staying motivated to keep competing in something.
I think it was really interesting that you chose, after years went by, to go back and get your master's degree in sports psychology. And that just shows that there's always more challenges ahead of you, and you tackle that and go get it as something to enhance your future.
Yeah, I love psychology. I love podcasts. I love learning about new stuff like that and developing, and then trying to find ways to take these theories into self-growth or athletic growth or relationships or whatever it is. Yeah, I think it's just very valuable to not be one of those coaches or teachers or coworkers that everyone thinks is too old school, too stuck in the past, not willing to learn, not willing to grow and evolve. And I think especially in the blind community, as we move forward, we need to keep up with it and stay creative and think outside the box. And hopefully enough people doing that, we can have some breakthroughs on some stuff and keep developing.
Well put. Do you have a favorite quote?
Favorite quote? My favorite quote is it's a Bible verse, and it's suffering produces perseverance. Perseverance produces character, and character produces hope.
There you go. Well, Ricky Tees, I want to thank you for all you're doing for the sports out there and bringing awareness to the possibilities that blind and visually impaired people can do. It's awesome looking at your story and your progression forward. You never just stop going and keep on improving and challenging yourself. Even today, you keep on looking forward to the next challenge. I hope that your impact, like you did in Minnesota with wrestling, your impact upon sports and athletes, blind, visually impaired, and even the sighted, will be promising, and looking forward to hearing more about what you're going to be doing in the future.
Thanks, Jeff. I appreciate that. And I've really been enjoying learning from your podcast, and have been taking a lot away from that. So I'm glad that I could finally be part of it. Thank you.
For more podcasts with the blindness perspective, check us out on the web at www.blindabilities.com and subscribe to the Blind Abilities Podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. That's 2 words, Blind Abilities. Our email address is info@blindabilities.com. And you can reach us at 612-367-6093. That's 612-367-6093. Give us some feedback, some suggestions. Let us know how we're doing. We'd love to hear from you. And from all of us here at Blind Abilities, thank you for listening. And until next time, bye-bye.
When we share
what we see through each other's eyes, we can then begin to bridge the gap between the limited
expectations
and the reality
of blind abilities.
And the realities of blind abilities.